All right. I don't know what this is, but we're going to talk about Succession. This is Jackson from the channel Skip Intro.
And also from ATN News.
And also from ATN News.
We hear for you.
Yes. That's an endorsement of ATN News and its politics, I think.
I just wanted to be clear before we have this conversation that I really enjoyed Succession as a show.
Right.
And I just want people to keep that in mind, despite whatever it is that I may say.
That you may say, yeah. See, this is what I was worried about. I was worried that you were going to come to the table today and you're going to bash on the one of a fantastic ending to what is a great show. So,
did you feel like it was a fantastic ending?
I did feel that way. Yeah, I loved this season as a whole. I thought it was. I don't know what else. I don't know. Like, I can't think of anything else I would have wanted from the show. Like, I would say it didn't necessarily like surprise me. In terms of what it did. Like, not that I knew every beat that was going to happen. Like, I didn't find the ending surprising. It was more or less what I expected in terms of the arc and trajectory thematically and emotionally. And I don't really know what else it could have done that would have made sense. So I
have ideas.
Satisfied.
I have notes.
You have some notes?
Yeah. I did like.
I guess
finish
before we
your thought,
get into it, though, yeah. We've talked about Succession periodically. This is going to be a discussion of the last season of Succession, a show we've been both following for a while. We're going to spoil it probably pretty quickly. So if you haven't seen Succession season 4, I don't know what you're doing here. But yeah. What are your notes, Jackson? How good?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that I really liked the season. Like, I thought it was a great season of television. So, like, I want to say that first.
Right.
I thought there were a lot of really great episodes. I especially really liked the funeral episode. I thought that was maybe my favorite episode of the entire series. I also thought that could have just been the end. That I would have been fine if it had just ended at the end of the funeral episode and we never saw any of them ever again.
Yeah.
I would have been totally fine with that. I think that for me, we've had this conversation offline before, and you said it. I remember you said something towards the beginning of the season when it started, and you were saying that you said to me, like, they're reminding everyone that Succession is a tragedy.
Right.
And I was like, yes. And I agree with that. My thing has always been a tragedy for who? Because I agree that it is a tragedy for these characters and like that everything has, I don't know, like their upbringing is tragic and like what has happened to them and their quest for approval or validation from their father, who they're never going to get it from for a myriad of reasons, including that he's dead. There's your first spoiler.
Right.
But I think that what always made the show interesting to me was the way that it would juxtapose their tragedy with the impact that dysfunction had on the broader population. Because it's not just that they're dysfunctional, it's that they're dysfunction. It's not just that they're like angry toddlers in a sandbox. It's that they're angry toddlers in a sandbox, but we all live in the sandbox.
Right.
Like they, I thought that the show did a really good job of really kind of satirizing or criticizing power the entire series. Like they would do this kind of, it was almost like this implication that, these people in charge are really messed up. They're really fucked up people. And, maybe they shouldn't have so much power, because that's bad for everybody. And I thought that the episodes that didn't work for me as well as they worked for what I assume was everybody else, because I feel like everyone loved the ending of Succession except for me, is when it focused on the tragedy of the characters at the expense of the dystopia that they're creating. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
like I thought that. Oh, geez, sorry, my chair like gave out. Even my chair's letting me down. Like, I thought that the last like 3 episodes before the finale, we go from the tailgate party, which is all about how the rich don't care about like politics or just sports to them. They're literally treating it like a sports event. They're all like buddy with each other. There's like a scene where the guy's like, "Get back, foul news demon," to like Tom, because Tom literally spreads like Nazi talking points on ATN. And then the next episode. Go ahead.
I think importantly, like politics in that episode are kind of or portrayed as like sort of basically like chess pieces in the capitalists' game, in the game the capitalists are playing.
Right,
like
because none of these people are going to be
subservient to the capitalists.
Yeah, no one in that room is going to be impacted by the election.
Right.
Like, their lives will not materially change. It's really just about, I mean, I guess like
they do actually, but like,
yeah, but not
not in a way
meaningfully.
that they meaningfully care about. Yeah.
Like, they don't care. They don't change the way that they change for everyone else. It's
Right,
like,
exactly.
this is the difference between us keeping our multi-billion-dollar corporation or us cashing out and getting billions of dollars.
Sure. And they impact them in the sense that, like, if you poison the whole world and you're in the world, you know, unless you can, like, some of them are trying fly to another planet, like, you get ultimately poisoned too, but you do have a much better buffer against that than everybody else. So
and to that point, I thought that they did a good job of escalating that over the previous couple episodes. And they were doing like, then there's the tailgate party, then there's the election where we literally see them just like, that was an awesome episode too, where they just elect a fascist. It's pretty clear that he's a fascist. Like, I don't think that they're like hiding the ball on that one, or being like, I don't know, like his speech at the end is chilling, horrifying. And then in the funeral episode, like, the outcome of the election is all around them. Like, there's all this news coverage. There are the protests. There's all this stuff about how the world is like, the world that they've created is closing in on them. Kendall's family goes to wherever the fuck they go. Roman gets literally like assaulted and disappears in the crowd.
Right.
And then in the finale, they're just like, "Oh yeah, Mencken might not even be president." And I was like, "Wait, what?"
I mean, they throw it out very softly, like it's still an unresolved issue, which I think was very much clear in the election episode. That like presumably he's president, but like this is still going to have to like get resolved later. So I think like it just carried forward that ambiguity, but I didn't necessarily take that as like that strong of a
I didn't take it as like a strong. I think that given the trajectory they had been on and had been building, it felt like a real anticlimax. Like, they were just like, that was the only mention that we got of any of it, of the protests, of the politics of anything, of the greater world impact. We didn't even like talk about Kendall's family anymore. Like, we don't even mention them. Like, he's not upset about them leaving. We just don't even think about them. Right, and I thought that what the show was really focused on, and I understand why it was focused on this, because it's a TV show, and TV shows are built on characters, is they were really interested in those 3 characters and their relationships with each other. And they were really interested in getting all of those characters into an ending point that would mirror their starting point. And I thought that was interesting, but I just thought that they kind of minimized the impact by focusing on... I think that they were most interested in the tragedy of these individuals and their inability to live up to daddy than even giving like a 70-30 split to like the people that they impacted along the way. Like, we even get the whole line about how like Kendall doesn't even like reckon with the fact that he killed that guy. Like, he's just like, "Oh no, it didn't happen." And like, that's the only reference we get. Like, to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like, for me, I think that would be more of an issue if I didn't feel like the like the root of like those characters, like the root of all those things, like the reason why all these characters are having this like impact on their external environment and the people that like their lives are having a negative impact on, like the root of that is grounded in like what is going on with them as individuals. And I think that's like ultimately what the show is returning to at the end. So like everything that they're dealing with, like Logan or Kendall trying to live up to his father, and this like fight that they're all having over this succession to the cost of everything else, like this strange, the way that they all have this tunnel vision about this thing that's happening, where essentially like they're using this huge, they're using like what happens in global or in like, national politics as playing pieces in them trying to seek their father's approval, essentially, and just trying to like appease their own like inner, generational trauma or whatever. That combined with sort of the way in which like the corporation that they've been fighting over this whole time, like does not, it like all that whole battle is completely insignificant to Waystar Royco, and it just goes on like without them. I think those two elements, like side by side, to me, like illustrated something that is really important to, I thought, like the show's critique of capitalism and what it's trying to say this entire time. So I definitely take your point. I think like, what you're saying is true. Like they did leave a lot of that stuff out. And, I think if there's anything I was a little bothered by in the final season, it was like how condensed it was time wise. Like, it doesn't go much past, I think it's like a week following the death. So like the whole season takes place over maybe like, 2 weeks at most or something like that.
Yeah, I did see this I was reading an interview with Mark Mila, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, the director of the episode.
Yeah.
And he was like, it was with Matt Zoller, and Matt was like, hey, what was up with that line about Mencken? Like the same thing that I just asked, basically.
Right.
And he's like, oh, well, we figured that it wouldn't be resolved that quickly, and we only had like the 2 or 3 days. And I was like, I mean, you did because you wrote it that way.
Right,
like,
right.
You didn't.
Yeah. You could
like,
have.
It wasn't actually. You could have just said that the board meeting was like 3 weeks later or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that created some weirdness in how the narrative unfolded, where like I didn't need another season, but I think if you had written the season in a way that maybe like protracted the same kind of story over like a longer period of time, you might have been able to accommodate maybe like more of what you felt was missing. But I think, in my view, I think the show did a really good job of building the foundation of what you're talking about, like laying all that groundwork of how everything that's happening with these characters is sort of like impacting everyone else. And then at the end, it's really just coming back to like the core, like those fundamental human core things that are like driving the structures of capitalism, and sort of like how it both like how it perpetrates like essentially individual trauma, can perpetrate like individual trauma onto like a larger group of people, but also how it itself is like completely unconcerned with like humans, like because it doesn't even know they exist.
Right.
Like I think one of the most powerful things to me about that finale was like the final moments, like after they have there's that incredible scene where they're all just like fighting in that boardroom. They're like having it out. And then we kind of like step away from that, and then it's just like Tom and Madsen shaking hands, and they're like taking pictures, and it's just like oh, back to like it doesn't the whole arc of this story, like the thing they've been fighting over this whole time, like it doesn't matter in the scope of the structure that, you know, it matters deeply to them, but it doesn't matter within the structure of this corporate entity.
Right. It just keeps going.
It just keeps
perpetuates
going.
itself.
Yeah.
It's, I thought that it was very, you know, not to be, I don't know. This is like Thomas Jackson bingo card, but it's very, you know, capitalist realism, you know, like this idea that it just keeps going. There's nothing without it. I just thought that personally, I thought that the focus on the individual trauma overshadowed any larger points that the show was trying to conclude with about capitalism.
Sure.
Like I thought that I think that is totally reasonable. I think that it's like I totally hear what you're saying, and I agree not to a degree. I just agree. But I think that just like the lasting, I didn't feel like there was a lot of like actual commentary on power or like America, if that makes sense. Like for so much of the show, we had this like idea of like either the American dream was like empty, or like there's that line in season 3 that maybe I'm just getting hung up on where he's like, we're a dying empire inside a dying empire or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm with you. And then they're like, I don't know what to make of it, just like being bought by a Swedish dude and just continuing like
right
like what is I don't know what the point is there. I've been like racking my brain about it. Like I mean,
isn't that what happens? I think like I think I don't think the show could have pulled
maybe that's an
kind of
unrealistic
ending that
expectation.
was I don't think the show could have felt true to itself and pulled any kind of ending that felt like we're gonna show like the downfall of capitalism in any kind of way, because like we're not seeing that in our own world, like in the way that we're seeing like the negative side effects, and those are kind of to some extent being depicted. I think that's what you're pointing to as like being absent from that last episode, but like the system itself is still very much like just chugging along. So I think it kind of has to in the context of this show. Like if it had ended with like Waystar Royco imploding and just like going bankrupt or something, that would have felt like too much of a yes, this is this is very bad for everybody, and so I don't really see what else it could have. And if you're not going to give the crown to any of the children, essentially, like I think like you need a way for the company to continue on. How do you feel?
I was just gonna say one more thing about that,
sure.
which was, you know, I'm not trying to like write my own ending for the show, and I'm not.
I don't think you are.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid being like, they didn't do the thing that I wanted them to do, and that makes me mad. Because like, I understand that they are more interested in the characters, and I'm more interested in the impact. Yeah. Like, I understand that there's like a little bit of a disconnect there, and for most of the show, I think they did both very, very well.
Right.
And even like in the funeral episode, I thought it was like maybe the best version of that. So I'm not like, I don't know. I'm like hating on the final episode, but not like the final season, if that makes sense.
Well, like that scene, I mean, that scene where Roman walks into the protest, I think is the show like doing that at its most poetic throughout the entire show. So like, you know, I think that kind of moment is there. It's what you're talking about. It sounds like you just like, that's what you would have loved to be like the end point, instead of like, you know, sort of the inner, just complete inner
I thought that a lot of the stuff that we were
destruction of
seeing
Kendall.
with the siblings was stuff that we had already seen so many times before. And I understand that that's like, there's like a Sopranos aspect to the show of these characters like walking up to revelations about themselves and then backing off because they don't actually ever change. Like they just are like Sisyphean kind of. Yeah, like in that interview, Mark is like he like compares it to like rooting for Liverpool and how they get beat the same way every single time. Like he's like, I hope that this time they're not going to get beat on the counterattack, but every single fucking time. So like I totally get that. So I'm not like, it's not that like that I want them to like, I understand that there is like this element of like stasis and that's like part of the tragedy. I just keep returning to this idea of like tragedy for who though? Like,
I mean, it's tragedy for everyone though. That's the thing. Like,
yeah, no.
episode,
I agree.
The line that really stuck with me from that last episode was Carolyn's line about a hellhole in paradise.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about how she wanted to get rid of Hugo, which was my favorite mini plot line of the 4th season, where Carolina and Hugo are just like trying to get each other fired. That was great.
Oh yes, yeah. No, that was a good nod. No, I meant Lady Carolyn. Is that?
Oh
her
yeah,
name?
yeah,
Like
the
mother.
Mom. Sorry.
Yeah, she says this line about like, I seem to have found the only hellhole in paradise or something like that. And that to me is what you're talking about. It's like, even for the people who win this game, it is not.
But they didn't
working.
win.
Yeah, but neither did Tom. Tom didn't win.
No,
like,
you know,
the guy who wins at the end, like, is sending blood to his assistants and is like mentally ill. You know, it's like, like the Logan didn't win. You know, like all these people. That's the tragedy. Is like all these people essentially kind of like lose, even the ones who get what they want.
Right.
Like they're all affected by the same like human,
except Mencken, maybe, I don't know.
Except Mencken, maybe, but like they're all affected by the same human trauma, like that, like a lot of people have to deal with, and like this whole system, this whole thing they've been chasing, like doesn't like amounts to like a hellhole in paradise. Like they have all this material condition that other people don't have, but like that's not even sort of like saving them from the thing that they all fear or don't want or something like that.
I think that I definitely agree, but I said I wasn't going to write my own ending for the show, but if I were
if you were to,
if I were to, I feel like a stronger message of what you're saying would be for them to win and to just still be empty. Right, to win but be sitting on a pile of ashes. Like, yeah, you're king of what? Yeah. Like if Kendall won but still had no family, still had he still is like a empty person. Like, I felt like by making them like not win, like they kind of didn't make that point as strongly as I think you're saying, as I think that you're getting. And right. I think that when one of the things that I have, I don't know if this is like a new belief of mine or whatever, but especially from like studying all these like difficult men shows, I feel like if you're gonna cut against something that is so widely accepted, whether it's like masculinity, or like if you're going to satirize that, or if you're going to satirize like capitalism, you got to really make the point hard, because people like you and I get it, and like a lot of people get it. But like one of the things that has maybe horrified's the right word, horrified me about the final season of Succession is the like gamification of the media coverage around it.
Right.
Like I used to do work for The Ringer, and I understand that they're like probably the worst at this, but like the whole thing was just like treating it like sports. Like,
Right,
who's going to win?
ranked,
What's the outcome?
yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of those people who follow it that way, the show ends and they're like, yeah, well, I guess the kids lost. Tom wins. Like,
Right. Yeah.
I don't think that they and I think that there was not a lot in the finale to dissuade people from that. Which, you know, we can argue about whether that's their responsibility or whatever. I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. But I just think that it was too easy to walk out of that feeling like sympathetic for the, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, I felt like it was too easy to walk away from that without like confronting your own views about capitalism in a way that like The Sopranos did not let you walk away. It was like, no, you have to fucking think about this now,
right?
Because we just ended it, and you're gonna think that your cable cut out. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm not plugged in enough to a certain side of the way.
I mean, don't be. It's terrible.
Twitter engaging with Succession or something. But like, I felt like the kids not winning. I mean, I'm sure there were people who were like rooting for Tom, who were like, "Yes, we got my guy won." But like,
Pain Sponge team, rise up!
Right? Yeah, exactly. But like, even that, I think is like, you know, maybe you are a diehard, you know, CEO capitalist hustle grinder, and you're like, Tom was my man, and he won because, you know, he knows how to grind.
I guess those people are already lost, right? So,
but like, if those people are watching this show and like the idea is being planted in their mind of like, yes, the guy who wins is just a pain, is the guy who's like is like a pushover, and just like, you know, kisses ass for whoever's at the top and is just like a pain sponge for the people above him. That's how you win at this game. It's like, you know, like, I don't know how to tell those people more directly, like, that's a bad, like,
yeah,
that's
right.
not
That's
a
fair.
good,
That's fair.
like, path for you to like pursue. You know, I don't know. There's always going to be people who don't get
it. Yeah, and I don't think that you should try to make your show just so, like, I don't know, like the lowest common denominator gets it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, my point is just more that when you have something as entrenched and just culturally accepted as capitalism, and you want to critique it, I think that I just wanted them to make that point stronger at the end.
Right. You wanted it to end with Ewan's speech.
I mean, I did want it to end with Ewan's speech, or ended with Kendall's speech.
Sure,
Kendall's speech was also tragic.
Yeah.
Where he's just
I
like,
love that they did that.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I love the juxtaposition of like a few episodes earlier. He's like, I guess the poison drips through, and then he's like, and I hope it's in me.
Right.
And like, I thought that was like a really strong image. I thought that was like a stronger image than like, sad boy Kendall maybe gonna kill himself. I think I just generally was less invested in. One of the critiques I heard a lot about Succession throughout the entire show, and it was just like a think piece thing. It wasn't just Succession; it was also like Billions and The White Lotus, and it was like, are we making shows that are just like, even like rich people have it hard too. Like, money doesn't solve your problems. And I thought that Succession, especially, I mean, we don't have to talk about any of those other shows. I think that I haven't seen Billions, but I think The White Lotus is not just about that. And I don't think Succession was just about that. But I think that after watching the finale, I think you have to work harder to make that argument. If that makes sense.
The argument that
it's not just about feeling sorry for rich people and that they have it hard too.
I just don't like. I haven't seen anybody who's engaging with the show in like I feel bad for these people, like, for any reason other than like the things that are happening to them on a human level, like the relational dysfunction, the the generational abuse. Like I think those are the things that make these people that like sort of endeared us to these characters to the extent like we're
endeared to them.
Felt bad for them. That was my perception of I think how most people like seem to be engaging with the show. But like the number one thing I heard were like, these people were terrible. These are such terrible people. So like I mean maybe some people walked away with that, but
I'm projecting maybe a bit, like I'm straw manning, like that's like I'm not creating someone who doesn't exist. Like I'm sure that they exist. I'm sure, but I think
they're out there.
I swear to God, they're out there. I think that what I am feeling, and we're gonna get into the feels, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that what I was most interested in was not what they were most interested in.
Right. Yeah.
And that's okay. That's like most shows.
Yeah. Well, I think,
but I think that I felt a little betrayed because I thought we were on the same page. And I feel like someone who got dumped. It was like, yeah, it's fine. Like you go live your life, I'll go live mine. But like, I thought we had something here.
Yeah. Are there any shows that are really doing the kind of thing that you're describing?
No, no, there's not. So that's I think that's another reason why it makes me mad, because it was like, you were so close.
I thought this was
You're so close to giving me exactly what I wanted.
Right. Yeah.
No. I think that it's probably an unrealistic expectation. And I think that all TV shows, for better or for worse, it's a character's medium. So it's always going to end focusing on characters over systems, or whatever, like, or themes or commentary. Because like you spend so much time with these characters that like the main difference between TV and film is time. Like that's the only real difference. But the time creates a bunch of like trickle down effects.
Yeah.
Like you're a lot more invested in the characters. So TV is much more focused on characters, and film probably does a better job with like themes and like singular arguments. Where TV has to kind of like go all over the place.
Yeah.
It's a lot messier, which is part of the reason why I like it, but also, it's not ideal for making a singular argument. Even a show like The Wire, which is about massive systems, is most famous for its characters.
Right.
So I understand that they're going to do that, and that they have to do that, and that that's what they want to do. I think maybe the emptiness I'm feeling is part of the thing that they wanted me to feel. It was like this idea that like it keeps going, and but that's really bleak. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the finale did not make me feel good. I loved it, but like I was like emotionally exhausted after it, and like kept thinking about it the next day, and it was just kind of like dragging me down, because I was like, this sucks. But like I mean I think that was, but not in the feeling I was having was not like that episode sucked. It was more like,
I don't think the episode sucked.
The inevitable. Right. I'm not saying you were.
Yeah, no. I just want to be clear, because I've been kind of a dick about it. But like, I didn't think that it sucked. I just was left wanting more.
I think I understand what you wanted and why you wanted it, and I don't even necessarily I don't think there's anything wrong with that. All I can do is just make the argument for sort of the presentation for my experience of the show. I also think and our channels reflect this too. Like we have slightly different interests, even in how we approach, or like slightly different like lenses through which we would view the same subject. So even like the problem of capitalism, I think this part of it that you're much more interested in is almost like specific policy or this broader systemic like impact or like effects, or the more like complicated, you like to examine, in your propaganda videos, you don't just talk about like, here's the impression vaguely emotionally that these shows create about the police. You talk about like very specific impacts and,
Right.
ideas and policies and things like that. And I think like my interest in some of those regards, or how it relates to Succession, is like, like what are the like emotional, like things, what are the things on an individual human level that like caused capitalism to arise in the first place as like a system. And like one of my beliefs about that is that it is, in some way like an expression of like emotional slash, I don't really want to use the word spiritual because
that's fine. You can use the word spiritual,
but like in a very broad sense, like
I think capitalism is very religious.
Trauma, like it is an expression of a certain kind of like trauma. Like the whole thing is grounded in this desire for constantly like gaining more and just like grabbing up as much space as you can. And I think that on a individual level comes from very much a place of like insecurity and and so anyway, without getting into all that,
before we hit record, we were both talking about the relative success of our channels recently and how that just makes us feel super insecure and how it's going to go away at any minute. So like, I totally get what you're saying and I totally agree. And I think that I missed that when I watched the finale specifically, was this kind of like, I think I just missed that. And I failed. No, I'm just
you're bad at watching TV, Jackson.
I actually want to go back to the thing you said about capitalism being spiritual, because I think that my favorite episode of maybe the entire series was the funeral, which is in a very ornate Catholic church, despite the fact that we have never seen any of them be even remotely religious.
Right.
And Logan earlier in this series saying that he doesn't believe there's anything after you die.
Right.
And
well,
the way that
he has his suspicions.
Right. Yeah. But the whole thing is like them basically worshiping at the altar of Logan Roy, symbol of capitalism.
Right.
And I found that imagery really powerful.
Yeah.
And the way that they almost treat Ewan as like a heretic. They're like, don't let him talk. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. So I thought that was like perfect. Like I as much as I have like harped on the finale and like not liking specific parts of it, or not even not liking parts, just wishing that they had included some other parts.
Right.
I was reading the interview with what really, I was like I wasn't like mad about it until I read that interview with Mark Mylod, and he said, they asked him about Mencken, and he's like, we just couldn't bear the thought of someone that terrible being in power. And I was like, bro, what show have you been watching?
Right. Yeah.
Isn't the whole thing about how terrible people have power? And he also says something about how the home video part was nice to see Logan's warm and charismatic side. And I was like, he was like, because people have that. And I was like, but he doesn't. Like, when did we ever see that? Like,
I mean, I think that's like one of the only times we did.
Right. No, that's the only time we did.
Right.
I think. The only other times were when he was having like his urinary tract infection. He was like, nobody gets to be mean to Frank except for me. Right. But like, he slapped a child in like the 5th episode of the series. He attacked Roman. He blackmailed his kids. He was just terrible all the time. And even when he was being like not terrible, there was this distinct feeling that he was just lying, that he was just playing you.
Yeah.
And I thought that like the monstrosity of him, and I mean, I think that that's part of the reason why he couldn't be there in the finale. Like he he had to be gone by the end.
Right. Yes.
Because he wasn't human. I don't think Logan was like, I mean, he was, but like, I thought he was more, I think that we got more of a picture into the mindset of all of the other characters than him. Like, we could tell when characters were lying in a way that you could never tell what Logan really thought about anything. Yeah. You could never really tell what he believed. They always kept you at like arm's length from him. Yeah. And I thought that was like a really good way of kind of using him as a symbol for larger things, or just like the unfeeling nature of capitalism or late capitalism or corporations or whatever. Like, they look like they care about things sometimes, but you don't really know. Like, the only thing they really care about is profit. And like one of my favorite scenes in this entire season is when he's talking to Colin about the afterlife. But before that, he literally says like, I think people are just monetary units.
Right.
And I was
that's
like,
reflected later when right after he dies, when Roman like shows the stock price and he's like, there he is, that's Dad.
There's Dad. Yeah, exactly.
I think like those kind of moments in the show are, I think, some of its best moments were these ways in which it really like codified in a piece of entertainment like ideas that I've only encountered in like somebody writing like theory somewhere.
Absolutely.
Or like on a podcast, an hour in or something, where it's like we say an hour into this podcast. Right. Yeah. So, I think dropping those kinds of things in there, in the midst of something so, broadly, widely watched, is fantastic. I
agree. I totally agree.
I mean, I see what you're saying about Logan. I think I liked those parts of the show because I think the show's humanization of these characters, I was a big fan of. I'm a big fan of that move because one of the things that I am interested in when it comes to like a critique of capitalism as a system is like the way in which often in critiquing capitalism, we tend to focus a lot on the people who are at the top, who are kind of like winning the game, so to speak. And we tend to vilify those people and treat those people as villains, and which often they are. But capitalism is not bad because the people at the top are villains. Capitalism is bad because the structure of the system itself creates a bunch of, things that impact our world in ways that end up being harmful.
Absolutely.
So I love the dynamic that this show had of kind of like, even those little pieces of like injecting these human elements. It's like even somebody as horrific and terrible as Logan Roy, you get him behind closed doors at certain moments, and like, he might come across as very warm and human. And it's like, I think that protects us from this like notion that, there's like this clean line and there's like bad people over here and there's good guys over here. And like the bad guys are always purely bad and evil. And that's what makes them like, that's what makes them terrible. And like, I'm on this side, and, just allowing us that clean separation. Yeah. Whereas I'm very interested in the ways where like, if we see aspects of commonality between ourselves and, the Roys, or like, we see the same interpersonal, drama or whatever, or abuse, if audiences are seeing a commonality there, and that's humanizing these characters, but that's also creating this sense, I think, of like, I think that strengthens sort of the systemic critique because
it's not. I understand what you're saying. It's not capitalism is not Jeff Bezos's fault, right? Like it is a system that there would be another person if it wasn't him. Like he is just a man.
And transforming if Jeff Bezos was just magically like a great guy, that also wouldn't fix the problem.
Right.
Because the problem is broader than just like Jeff Bezos' sense of morality or how decent or bad he is as a person.
And I totally agree with you. I actually I definitely agree that I think that humanization is good. And I take your point that it actually is a stronger systemic critique than vilifying them. I think that in my fervor, I don't know. I've just been like these people fucking suck. I fucking hate them. Yeah. But I think
they do really suck.
They do really suck.
That's natural.
I think that what I'm really bemoaning is in that finale, in that specific episode, is just the focus purely on them and not on how. Like I agree that it
seems to lose sight of.
I feel like it just loses the thread a little bit of impact of you said capitalism is not bad because the people at the top are bad, right? The reason capitalism is bad is because it's like authoritarian in some ways. Like it's this system. I mean, now we're getting into like theory bullshit, but like it's this system that people at the bottom have no vote in. They have no power. They have no voice. They are at the whims of these new kings and queens, which is, I think, Succession has long been compared to like Hamlet. And I think that is a worthy one because that's about like the kings and queens of the court. And I think that, in a lot of ways, that's what Succession is about. It's like about our new aristocracy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just want them to also I wanted them to not, if they hadn't even said that thing about Mencken not being president, I honestly would have been more fine with it. But I was just like, what? I don't know. Like, we didn't see anyone who wasn't
interpret that line that like definitively. Like, it felt more like a dig that Shiv was just making against Connor than anything
to
else.
Me,
like,
it was no. I agree. It was a dig
Willa.
that she was making against. But to me, the idea that the show would reduce all of the political turmoil that we had seen into just a throwaway dig at Connor was annoying. I was annoyed. I was offended.
I think but
I was like, that's what you think about it,
right?
Like that was my immediate reaction. Was like, oh, that's what you think about all of the political turmoil, is that it's just a joke, or not just a joke.
It is to those characters, I think,
right?
Like,
but then we didn't
and
see.
It reflects that
there was no other opposing view of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just thought that was missing from the finale, but not in this undercuts the entire message of the show, right? Because you're totally right. And I made like a reaction unscripted video about this on Patreon, shameless plug. But I said at the end of that like, no, this show still has like plenty of really interesting things to say about capitalism, about power, about wealth, right? All of those things. I think that what I was left with in the finale was a feeling that they were maybe more aesthetic choices than fundamental, and what they were most interested in were the impact on these people at the top, which you have made a really good argument is a critique of the system itself in a way that I hadn't thought about before. But that was my initial reaction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that what you're saying about like that to me was like how the thesis really came together at the end was what you're saying about like the succession of the show ultimately in my mind ends up being the inheritance, the generational inheritance of this system or of these positions. I love that line from Kendall where he's like, I am or he says something about like being a piece fit to
a cog fit just for one machine.
Right. Yes. And like the thing that the sort of interpretation I had of the show's ultimate critique of capitalism that is maybe reaching a little bit beyond, I think, what is on the page in my mind is like that inheritance isn't just those people. It's like we all end up just born into this system that then like you have to survive within, like, and you can't just very easily leave,
Right.
So it's like the thing the thing that we're all inheriting and have no choice over, like being in the position of is this system, and that's part of how it perpetuates and stuff.
Right, and I think that that's totally valid and worth exploring and everything. And I just also want there to be at least some acknowledgement that like these
the political
people
connection,
or just like
more, yeah.
or just like the reason capitalism is bad is exploitation, right? Like there are so many people, like, yes, these people don't have votes
right
in the system that they grow up in or whatever, although they certainly have more of a say, right?
Yeah.
Like they could have not elected Mencken if they wanted to, like
Right.
they like Shiv didn't even try.
Yeah,
she just pretended to try.
Yeah.
But I just want there to be acknowledgement of the vast majority of people who have even less say and are exploited even more than these people. And I totally get your point that like, yeah, at the top they are still like, even the winners are losers. And I agree with that totally. But like, I just don't want to ever lose sight of the fact that what makes it horrific is not that the winners are also losers, but that like there are millions of losers just to create those winners who are losers.
Sure. Yeah. And there are people who are losing in a lot in ways that are so much more horrific.
Yeah, like how did they really lose? They lost because they have billions of dollars and can fly around to, like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, but like they're completely like empty, horrifying shells of human beings who
yeah, but like I'm an empty shell of a human being and I don't have money. You know what I mean? Like
right, yeah.
Like there's this message,
but
I think there's this implicit message that like money doesn't solve your problems, and that's, or like all your problems. And that's totally true. But there are definitely some problems that it does solve. Like
right, yes. Yeah, but the biggest problems that people face like are not inherently solved by money. I think like this is
not for everybody. Like
not for any right, yeah.
Like
I mean,
money
the biggest problem
would
that we
help.
face
Like
is we're all gonna die. Like like we're all gonna die. And money can't fix that.
Sure.
Like some people die a lot sooner than other people because they don't have as much money. So like, money can definitely.
I think
help
you're forgetting about Living Plus, where you can live forever.
No, I forgot.
But I'm just like thinking about how like, yeah, money doesn't solve all your problems, but like it can put a roof over your head, and that helps a lot.
No, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. Like there are. A lot
I know we're not disagreeing here.
I think. Yeah, I think it's like I said earlier. I think it's just slightly. The difference is like we have slightly different lenses through what we view is the most important aspect of essentially the critique, and the show really zeroed in on the one that like
that you really liked,
that I really care about,
and the episode before it really zeroed in on the part that I liked.
Exactly.
So I think we both won.
Yeah,
really.
we both won.
And if we've learned anything, that means that we're both losers.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, no, I'll give you this. I think like at the beginning I said like it didn't really surprise me, the ending. And you know, I'm not going to try to imagine an alternative ending or come up with something. But
I
like,
did. No.
but like I would have loved something that would have kind of like left me with the feeling I think a lot of people had at the end of The Sopranos, or you know, like something that I would have been like, that would have surprised me a little bit more. You know, and that's really hard to do. That's an unfair expectation to level at a show. But I will say, like, I think there may have been some room to do something that might have been a little bit more like maybe even formally radical in a way that would have
like in that cut to black idea, right? Like that structure.
Right.
Like you mean
Yes.
formally that way, right?
Yeah. Or if you had just ended like more on the tone, like you were saying, like more on the tone of the funeral episode, or just like there was a brief moment when like they're all like, you know, meal for a king.
Yeah.
Like where I thought like, is this how the show's going to do it? Like they're just going to like all waltz in there and they're like, we did it. And they all just win. And it's like a happy ending. And that's how the show gives us like the ultimate middle finger, is just by being like,
I really was kind of hoping for that, to be honest.
And I almost think that would have been like more subversive and more like, I don't know. But then
I don't think what they did was, I don't think that what they did was bad. I thought it was good. I just didn't, I don't have a problem with anything that they did.
You just hate anything fun or good. I'm just kidding.
It's true, though. No. I just wish that there had been emphasis, or some emphasis, or even like something about the world outside of these people. Yeah. Like maybe when, like, it could have been as simple as like when Shiv and Tom get into the car at the end, they're again assaulted by protesters.
Right.
Like that would have been fine. Even like something that small, but just this idea that like there is a world like they are not
outside of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's really all I wanted from the finale, and it felt very insular. One of the things I walked away from the finale thinking was like how small that world had become.
Right.
It felt like that almost entire episode. I obviously they were in Barbados for part of it, but like so much of the episode was like in that boardroom, right? And that floor of the office in a show that had felt so like widespread and like traveling the world and like all this other stuff. All of a sudden, it just like condenses and it's this little office. And there's something really interesting about that. Yeah. About how decisions are made in these that affect millions of people. Like how many employees does Waystar Royco have? You know, or like how many people do they speak to through ATN News or like all these other things? And they're really just a bunch of dysfunctional people in a boardroom. I think there's something really interesting there. But what's interesting to me in part is that there is a world outside of that. And I think that's what you're talking about too, when you're talking about like a critique of capitalism. And how these people kind of perpetuate it. I just wanted that acknowledgement of the outside world that I thought that they had been building really strongly towards in the previous 3 episodes. So maybe it was subversive. You know,
we're the outside world, Jackson.
Yeah,
you know,
maybe it was subverting my expectations.
The outside world is the person on the other side of the screen, sitting in the couch watching the show.
That's why Kendall looks at the camera. Like, I don't know if you saw this deleted scene, but Kendall turns around at the end and he just looks right in the camera. And he goes, "Pretty fucking cool, right?"
They left the protesters out at the end because the implication is, are you going to be the protesters?
My dad texted me yesterday. My dad is like an MSNBC liberal person. And he texted me basically blaming our generation for not caring enough. And that's the reason why Donald Trump isn't in prison yet.
Oh, right.
And I was like, that's a take.
Yeah,
That's a take.
definitely a take.
He's like, you guys have just given up. And I was like, yeah, it's on us. You're right.
Yeah, it's our apathy is
He's like,
definitely-
why aren't people protesting in the streets? I was like, I don't know, Dad. I don't know.
Yeah.
There was a lot of protests in
maybe
2020.
because when a lot of people tried, they got shot at.
Also, yeah, I don't know. There were how many? It was the largest protest movement of humankind in 2020.
Yeah, and what
and
did it accomplish?
and then we solved policing forever.
Right, yeah.
I do want to ask you one like kind of like a nuts and bolts question, I guess, about the plot of the finale. And I think this is like something that people, I don't know. I have had disagreements with just people talking about it in my life. Did Shiv's decision at the end make to betray Kendall make sense to you? In some ways it made sense to me. Like, yeah, she would betray, like she just doesn't, she just loves getting in his way. Like
Right.
That's her thing. But on the other hand, like, I feel like this puts her further from the seat of power in a way that she was always trying to be as close to power as possible.
I mean, how does it do that? It feels like I think she wins under Tom for sure more than she would under Kendall. Yeah,
You think so?
yeah, I do.
Okay.
I also like my take on that was
Because I felt like she would still maintain, first of all, shareholder vote, which I don't know I don't know the nuts and bolts.
yeah,
of the
but like we just
acquisition.
saw like how brutally like Kendall like had zero regard for including her in anything.
Sure.
Whereas like even her and Tom when they were at their most like most at each other's throats still had some level of like influence on each other.
Yeah.
I think.
I guess it was just hard to track her decision because in the timeline of the show,
It's moving
of that
pretty
episode,
quickly. Yeah.
it moves really quickly from her being like, she finds out that Tom is going to be the CEO, and she's like, "Fuck you, Tom. We're going even harder on blocking this acquisition." To then being like, never mind.
I think
And that is partially like Shiv's character, right? Like
Right,
she is
yeah.
super wishy-washy, and I've always, I mean, she is frustrating. She's frustrating. Like that's the point.
Right.
But I was like, in real time, I was not surprised that she, like, I was taking, I don't know if you take notes when you watch TV.
not the first time.
I was taking some notes, and I remember writing in my notes, Shiv is not to be trusted under any circumstances.
No.
So like I knew that wasn't surprising, but at the same time I was like, but wasn't she just mad at Tom like 10 seconds ago? Like,
I think like her anger at Tom cannot be trusted because their relationship, like the anger had become in this like the trajectory of the last season. I think anger had become so intertwined with how they were like relating to each other, where it's like
sure,
their
it was self-hatred
anger at each other was almost becoming like something that was drawing them like closer together. But I think the other reason like that flip didn't bother me is like the thing that felt weird to me was her agreeing to go with Kendall. So like,
yeah, okay.
So I was like, this feels unmotivated. So when she flips back, I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
okay.
She was
Cool,
just
cool,
like momentarily caught up in like.
So we both had issues with Shiv's decision-making process.
Yeah. The show, I mean, one of the things about the show is like I've always had maybe a little bit of trouble exactly tracking like everybody's motivations or for certain decisions from like moment to moment in certain episodes.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that was anything new to me.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But yeah.
Well, don't you know that people in capitalism only act out of rational self-interest?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's the free market, baby.
Right. Yeah. It's not.
Yeah. No, I hear you. There was a part of me that was like, they're going to fucking kill him. They're going to, I was like, yeah, they're going to do it. I think they're going to do it.
When they started talking about murdering him, I was like,
well, and then he was in the water, and I was like, the water is like a big symbol for Kendall. Like, we keep going back to, like, every time he's in water, he's like on the verge of death. So
I think they pulled it off well in light of the fact that like I thought a lot of people were going to be disappointed with the ending of the show.
Okay.
Because I thought my feeling was that a lot of people didn't quite
I wanted more people to be disappointed.
get what the show was, in the sense that, and maybe I just underestimated most of the audience, but like the show has always been more of like a Sopranos than like a Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones. And it's like,
In what way?
in like Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad are like shows. I think I'm stealing this maybe from Alan Sepinwall or something. One of his writings, he kind of talks about things in this language. So apologies if I am. I couldn't cite.
You can plagiarize Alan. I do it all the time.
Exact source. But like those shows are like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad to some extent. Some of the other shows like that have been popular recently are like shows where things happen. There's like a twist, like a moment where there's like this big conclusion, like something happens, events happen. I think he was talking about how people constantly expected twists in Succession, and then like, or were like predicting twists, like, ooh, they're going to reveal who the leaker is, like who's leaking all the things, and there's going to be this crazy twist.
Right.
And there have been like one or two twists on the show. I think like Logan's death was unexpected. Like there's a few moments.
The end of season 2 when Kendall turns against him. Yeah.
The end of season 2. You know, there's these like unexpected moments, but it's really not a show that was about like these big events that happened in the same way that like something like Game of Thrones would have been.
It was much more. I agree. It was much more like, even to pick something even less spectacular than The Sopranos, kind of Mad Men-y.
Yes,
like,
yeah, Mad Men is another great example. Not a show where things happen.
Right. I think I agree. I think that you're right. I do think that like a lot of the fandom was very much in the power ranking. I mean, like, I'm guilty of it. I was doing them, but like who's going to win? Who's going to sit on the
something happens ending was like Greg's going to end up CEO or whatever.
Yeah, right.
It's like it's just not that kind of show ultimately.
Well, I think a lot of people were maybe surprised that like Tom became CEO.
Right.
But like this very much like, who will sit on the Iron Throne? Who will win the Game of Thrones? I think that discourse had really taken off. And I think, honestly, part of the reason that they ended the show after 4 seasons was because they didn't like that, particularly. That's just a theory. I'm just wildly speculating. I have no idea.
I think the decision to end it now was great. Like, this show, they chose the perfect moment to end it. Like, yeah.
Also, am I crazy, or did like a bunch of people watch the entire show in the last like 2 months?
I think there are a lot of people who came on board for
just the final season, right?
Final season, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that's true. It kind of had a Breaking Bad sort of accumulation like that. Yeah. Well, TV's over now. I think this really closes out a chapter. Like, you know, Succession's over, Barry's over. I haven't watched the end of Barry yet.
I haven't watched the end of Barry yet either.
You know, all the good shows are over. Ted Lasso ended. I didn't watch that, but like everything's over. And
you want to give me like a couple seconds to talk about Ted Lasso?
Yeah, sure. Are you going to spoil anything?
No. It's just like, you want to talk about a show that just crashed and burned super hard.
I've been hearing this. People like season 3. Did it actually end, or did just season 3 end?
Well, okay, so unclear. First of all, is the big takeaway is TBD.
Right.
It would appear that Jason Sudeikis is done, but that they might continue with like the rest of the characters. It's unclear to me when they decided this would be the final Jason Sudeikis season. The finale feels like they decided while writing it that this was the end. Like, they're like, oh, fuck, I don't know. Like, we gotta just wrap all this shit up. It was, oh my God, it was so bad. The thing about, we don't have to talk about Ted Lasso. All you need to know about Ted Lasso. All you need to know about Ted Lasso is the first season, the episodes were like 25 minutes. The second season, they were like 50 minutes. and the last season they were all over an hour.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to know. No, I don't think TV's over. I do think that we're in this.
I'm joking.
Yeah, no, I think we're. I have been kind of.
This does feel like the
disappointed in
really
TV this year.
By that is this does feel like the end of a certain chapter. Like I feel like
sure
it might be easy in the future to look back at this moment and be like writer's strike, success. Like all of these shows kind of came to an end at a similar time, and it feels like we're turning over a new page. Better Call Saul, Atlanta, Succession, Barry. There's
all these tentpole shows of the 2010s.
The current like slew of like prestige, quote unquote, even if that's even means anything anymore, like kind of close out. And then we have the writer's strike. We don't know how that's going to conclude yet, and we have maybe a new page kind of turning over. We have HBO turning into Max. Yeah,
the place to find HBO. Because what everyone wanted was for HBO to also show all of the less prestige-y stuff.
Right. The only way that branding would have been branding change would have been worse is if they had named it like Gojo or something.
Stargo
or Star Play or whatever the name of the streaming service.
I think it was Stargo because it was it was in the opening sequence, and it's on a loading screen. It's just got the circle of death, which I thought was hilarious every time.
It was kind of suspiciously similarly branded to the HBO Go thing too. But
if there's one thing I know, it's that that Hollywood writers do not have a high opinion of David Zaslav, the executive of Warner Discovery.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He got booed at they invited him to do the commencement speech at Boston University, and he got booed the entire time.
Oh no.
And then the president of BU was like, "This is cancel culture."
Right.
They're trying to cancel him. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
Can you not boo people anymore?
We're not allowed to not like. We have to like everyone, Jackson. I don't know if you got the memo, but not liking someone is cancel culture.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
It infringes on their freedom of speech when you dislike them.
Yeah.
So, really you not liking the ending of Succession is an attack on Jesse
I
Armstrong.
think that I'm walking
and Mark
away from
Mylad's
this
freedom of speech. I've convinced you? You're saying I've convinced you?
I'm walking away from this conversation feeling a lot better about the ending of Succession, for sure.
Maybe we can clickbait that for this video.
I came out hot, but I think you've made a lot of really interesting points. I think that I'm still frustrated that they did not.
I mean, you can't erase your experience of watching the episode.
I'm still going to be frustrated about that.
Right.
But I'll always have the funeral. We'll always have Paris.
You can just go back when you do a rewatch at some point. You can just end there. Just stop.
There's so many things about the culture around Succession that I find fascinating. Like the fact that Kara Swisher hosts the Succession podcast, even though Nan Pierce is literally just a critique of Kara Swisher.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, what happened to the Pierce deal? Good
question. Who knows? I guess that fell apart.
I think that's a plot hole, but it's one of those ones that I'm not upset about. I didn't want them to fix.
Well, that was contingent on.
Did they sign a contract? I don't know.
That was their plan. If it sold, they were going to go buy Pierce on their own.
Yeah,
and then I don't remember what they were trying to do exactly, but
the 100.
Yeah, the 100. Finally, Roman can go do the 100 now. What do you think Roman will do after this?
Probably sexually harass people. I don't know.
Yeah. It's not good. Whatever. It's
Jeffrey Epstein Island, maybe.
Yeah. You don't think he
stalk Jerry? I don't know.
Yeah.
Nothing good. You're right.
yeah, it's not good. I was trying to figure out if there was some way he had an awakening in the final episode.
It's weird how
the protesters, but
the ending for Roman, they do make it seem kind of happy, right? He's smiling, he's drinking alone, he didn't want to be part of it. He's the only one who realized that they're all bullshit.
He's the only one who kind of gets what he wanted, I think, in some way. But, you know, as we also see, what he wants is like pain.
That's true. Yeah, it's the only way he could experience love.
Yeah. So
I really enjoyed a lot of the flourishes of the finale. I know now we're just like going on and on, but like,
yeah, nobody's listening anymore. We can say whatever we want now.
But like, I liked the symmetry of him crying on Kendall's shoulder.
Yeah, yeah.
Cause in like the same exact spot where Kendall cried on Shiv's shoulder, in Safe Room, back in season 2.
Yeah.
The other contender for best episode of the series.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really they
like, there was a lot of awesome filmmaking stuff that they did in that finale.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like undercut any of that, as much as I've been hating on Mark. You did a good job. I just think that
the finale was better than the menu.
Agreed.
I'll give you that.
Ouch.
Sorry, Mark. Your strength is in television, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know what's next for like any of these people, but
yeah. Well, it'll be really interesting to watch some of these people go on from here. What was that? Did you see that acceptance speech from Kieran? And he was like, you're never going to give me this again. And I was like, that might be true. Like, no shade to Kieran, but like,
no,
he's one of those, like, so many of these characters were like they were phenomenal performances, but before that they were exceptional casting
and written. It's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's also like these characters are more powerful, and the acting performances are more powerful because they have great scene partners too.
Yes,
like, you're right, it's the casting across the board.
Yeah.
Like the way Tom plays off of other characters, the way Roman does, the way Kendall does.
Yeah.
In some ways, I thought that my only, like, obviously Logan had to die, but the fact that we didn't get like more scene pairings of him with the other kids felt like a loss. Like, one of my favorite scenes of the entire show is when, at the end of season 3, when Kendall and Logan sit down, and Logan's like, I think he's gonna like poison me, and also like they just like hate each other. I don't know, like.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Great show.
Great show.
Great show. The last of the great shows.
Yeah, we'll never have a good one again.
So there will be nothing to talk about after this. So
it ain't Yellow Jackets, I'll tell you that.
So if anyone's here who has followed the whole trajectory of our Succession discussions, you made it to the end.
I'm sorry.
So we apologize for subjecting you to this. Go watch
Succession.
Jackson's
The Menu.
Yeah, go watch The Menu. Go watch Jackson's great videos that he's putting out on his channel, Skip Intro.
Go watch Thomas Flight's great videos on Meta Modern. That one was, I was telling you before we started, one of my favorite videos that I've ever seen from you.
Succession, believe it or not, very meta modern show. I thought about making a video about it, but that move at the end where it goes from like the like optimism of like, oh, they're all winning and they're all like happy, just to like the crushing defeat like minutes later, and just kind of it's like the self-awareness.
It was pretty cynical
of how like of Kieran's kind of final speech, and sort of like the drawing of the audience's attention back to like your investment in all these characters' drama is like an engagement with that bullshit on some level. I think it's very meta modern sort of like,
but
framing.
cynical, interesting, cynical meta modernism.
Yeah, it's not, it's cynical, but it's sincere. Like, it wasn't insincere. That's the thing that I think.
True.
So it's like deconstructing all these things, but it's doing so like sincerely. Like, it is ultimately trying to level an actual critique or actually say something about these characters and capitalism. It's not just like, ooh, this whole story has been a big joke.
My only critique of your meta modern video is that you didn't mention Scream, which is like the meta modern movie.
Yes, yeah. It is one of the initial seeds of meta modern.
Yeah, and it's like one of those ultimate like deconstructing while also doing all of the
Yes.
things that it's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot of great examples that
You didn't talk about the one I wanted you. No. My issue with your meta modern video was you didn't talk about the people being exploited under cap. No.
right. Yeah.
All right.
All right. We'll catch everyone later at some point, at some undisclosed future date.